First of all, a very, very good evening and a good morning, and maybe a good afternoon to some of you, because I know for this session, a lot of people are joining us from all over. So we've got people from the US, some people that are waking up as early as 4:30 in the morning to join this session with Madhu for our very, very special session, which is with award-winning global screenwriter Madhu Powar Garg. So today we will be talking about creativity, writing, and passion. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sukirti Gupta. I am the co-founder of Sipping Thoughts. Sipping Thoughts is a multi-platform media company that was co-founded by me and Meeta Gudgutia. It was set up keeping in mind the tagline, Real Women, Real Thoughts. We wanted to create a no-judgment platform and create a network of women for women. Sipping Thoughts reaches to about 2.5 million women on a monthly basis. Today, we have something very, very exciting for you. We have with us Madhu Powar Garg. So I met Madhu 25 years ago. Both of us were quite young, quite rosy-eyed at that time. Both of us were in Mumbai, and we both were starting out our careers. I in the corporate world, and she also in the corporate world in the legal sphere. So it's so interesting. So about, I think, a couple of months ago, and voila, thanks to Facebook, I know we're all cribbing about it lately, but I saw a post and I saw that she had won an award. And that too, I was thinking, okay, it must be a corporate award, it must be Woman of the Year award, it might be any of these. But then what do I see? It is an award that she has won for the best screenplay. And of course, my interest was piqued. So today, Madhu will share with us her tips for writing and getting out of your comfort zone and just doing it. So as I was saying, Madhu's first screenplay, which is called Indian Summer, it's a multiracial coming of age romantic comedy and has received and won 14 awards at various film festivals. These include the Best Screenplay at the Global Film Festival, Best First Time Screenwriter at the Los Angeles Film Awards, and at the Marina del Rey Film Festival in the US. She has also won at the London Independent Film Awards and at the Paris International Film Festival. Currently, Madhu is also working on two other screenplays and a novel. What is very, very interesting is that Madhu launched into writing in her 50s, giving into a passion, as she puts it, an indulgence, which she discovered the joy that the process of writing brought to her. And she was hooked. And when I was talking to her, she said prior to this, she only used to write legal briefs. So this was her first attempt. So imagine shifting her mindset from legal briefs to corporate writing. So Madhu moved to the US to attend law school in her early 20s, and she worked as a corporate attorney for several years. She followed the traditional path as many of us do. But as an outlet to her creative side, she painted, initially working on portraiture in oils and later in abstracts and acrylics and oils, developing a style that fused color and texture to express experience, emotion, and aspiration. She is also the founder and president of the New York City Children's Holiday Party, an organization that's dedicated to bringing joy to the holidays to homeless children in New York City, giving in to another love, children, especially those in need. Another creative outlet was when Madhu successfully launched and operated a tween girls clothing company called Suri, which some of her outfits were worn by the celebrity tweens on cover pictures for some of the most notable magazines. So, as we can see, Madhu has had diverse passions. She's had a broad career, and she has been one that has been constantly pursuing her dreams and always making sure that she prioritized creativity and that it is never out of reach. Madhu, first of all, welcome to Sipping Thoughts.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me.
We're so excited. Madhu, tell us a little bit about your journey and what finally prompted you. I know that you've been a very creative person. What prompted you to finally say, you know what, now I'm going to start writing? And that too, I think it was in your 50s that you started.
So I think it was more of a dormant desire. I grew up as a huge fan of movies. Growing up in Mumbai, my father used to take us, the entire family, to see a Hindi movie almost every Friday night. And sometimes it would be, foreign or English movies. And so the fascination for the film world has always been there. But like many women of my generation, you either finished your education and went through an arranged marriage, or you were expected to have a proper career, law, medicine. So I opted for law. And I've not been unhappy with it. I've actually enjoyed my career. But I've also, like you mentioned, kept up with side passions, the artistic side of me, paintings, designing, manufacturing clothes. But films were always at the back of my mind. NYU, the New York University, I live in New York, had a short 3-month intensive course on film production that I always intended to do. But the problem was I was in the summer and I was raising my kids and I didn't know what to do with them while I attended this intensive. And then unfortunately, just as my kids grew up, the course was canceled. So over the years, I've had a few ideas for storylines, and I would run those by friends and family, and then just let them go, not really doing anything about them. But about 12 years ago, I tried to write a novel. I wrote maybe 2 chapters, and I basically second guessed myself and gave it up. To be honest, it sounded like Mills and Boons or Harlequin to me, and I was like, oh, what the heck am I doing? This is not for me. But the idea for Indian Summer came about 2.5 years ago. My daughter was in college at the time, a film and media major. And, I told her the storyline I was thinking about. I was expecting that classic teenage eye roll. But instead I got yeah, I think that's a good one, Mom.
Eye roll? Can you do that eye roll for us? Because we're so used to seeing that teenage eye roll.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, really. Why don't you do something more appropriate to your age? Because it's about a young girl. So, but instead, she encouraged me, and so this time I actually sat down and I wrote it. So,
you started writing in your 50s because you said you started writing about 2.5 years ago. So, when you put that pen to paper, what was the first thing that came to your mind? Because, usually, typically, we are very shy. And at 50, when you're picking up a new trade, how did that feel?
Honestly, it's never too late. Like a few years ago, Agnes Martin is one of my favorite abstract artists. And there was a retrospective on her at the Guggenheim Museum here in New York. She had just died at the age of 94. And the way the retrospective was set up was that each room had a work from a decade of her life. And I remember I was so struck by the distinct progress in her paintings from her 40s to 50s to 60s, 70s, 80s, and even her early 90s. It was truly inspirational. And that whole idea of age is just a number. It really struck me in her paintings because her paintings, each decade was so distinctive from the other decade, and the paintings did not lose at all in their quality. And I thought, this is how one should be. One should have a passion, be in it, and be there for yourself.
That's so nice. It's
Yeah.
so great. Like I said, both of us, I mean, I remember you as that corporate lawyer. So it's so good to see you following your passion. But,
No, and also, I mean, honestly, it's years of experience that you are bringing to your projects. It's all material for writing. It's all fodder for you to use in some way in your scripts or your novels.
fantastic. And you said you were hugely motivated by Hindi movies and, of course, TV series. So tell us some of these that have motivated you and how did they motivate you? Because you moved to the US when you were in your 20s.
Yes, I did move to the US, but at the time when I moved, Hindi movies were 3 hours long. A fighting scene would go on for like 20 minutes. Yeah, a fight scene would go on for 20 minutes. A car chase would go on for half an hour. In my head, I was always an editor. I think if I knew how to, if I had the technical skills, I think I would have opted to become an editor because I was always like, cut this, cut that. But I always enjoyed the basic stories and the characters. And then, of course, I moved here in the mid 80s and there wasn't much access to Hindi movies after that. So it's been mainly only, obviously American movies. And I love them. But now I go back and I look at Netflix and everything, and Hindi movies are great. They've cut down on the timing and, they're doing a great job.
So tell us some of those that have been your inspiration or some of the TV series that actually inspired you and said, okay, you know what, I can do this.
Suki, that's a little hard to answer because really the answer is a very broad answer in that they all inspire. Each one, you take something from it. It depends on their genre. It's fantastic that so many different people try all these different genres, and you learn so much from the techniques behind the production or the writing itself, or some characters that you fall in love with. Obviously recently, I think we've all been doing a whole lot of binge watching. I've just finished Bridgerton, which I loved, Queen's Gambit, which I loved. And then Hindi movies also, they're doing a great job. Ludo was really nice.
Fantastic. Now, you said in your mind you were always an editor. So, when you're thinking, and I will come to this question next, when you're looking at a movie, are you just watching it very relaxed, or are you kind of analyzing also at the same time? That, okay, you know what? Here is how the screenplay was, here is how it could be. What's going on in your mind?
Oh, actually, that is something that has changed in my watching. I wish I could be more relaxed and just accept whatever's happening. But yeah, that happens a lot now when I say, I wish this had happened instead of that, or they really didn't need the scene. Or yeah, I am analyzing in a different way now instead of just sitting back and enjoying.
Now, tell me, I mean, when a person thinks about writing, why did you choose a screenplay? You said you started first with a book. How are they different? Because I know that it's quite confusing now because you've got screenplay writers, you've got book writers, you've got series writers.
Well, two things. As I mentioned before, I did attempt a novel before, but this time when I thought of Indian Summer, it was so visual to me. And I took my time to just think about it before I started writing. I was imagining the scenery, the setting, the dialogues, and I just knew that this should be written as a screenplay as versus a book. And the two are the writing is very, very different. In fact, I'm in a little bit of trouble because I'm actually trying to, or rather, I have gone back to that novel from 12 years ago, and it was probably a mistake. I should have started rewriting it as a screenplay first, but I thought, oh, let's finish it as a novel and then write it as a screenplay. But everything is different in how you write them. In a screenplay, you have to make the point quicker. You cannot wax and wane or belabor the point. A book can have several chapters. The lengthier, the better. Screenplay is a 3-act structure. Each scene is a chapter. And also, a screenplay, you have to be genre specific because later when you're pitching or when you're entering festivals, you have to be able to check a box like, is it a family drama? Is it a romantic comedy? Is it a, coming of age story? Whatever, horror story, etc. So you cannot really cross, genres. And in the actual writing, a screenplay is done in present tense. Novels have traditionally been written in the past tense. Also, nowadays, actually, some modern novels are attempting to write in the present tense. But basically, it's just a screenplay is a lot of show, hardly any tell, more visual. And a novel, you really have to build up, and you have the space to do that.
So you would say, because we see a lot of books are constantly being adapted into screenplays, but you're saying it's not so easy to do.
It's absolutely not easy to do. It's usually a different set of writers who do that. It's rarely the original author because, like I said, it's a different set of skills to make it a more sort of present, it's happening right now kind of writing. So yeah, very different.
So tell us a little bit about Indian Summer. What is it about, and what kind of gave you the inspiration for that story?
Okay, so Indian Summer is a purely fictional story. Everyone asks me, is it your life? Is it your daughter's life? Is it somebody you know? It's nobody I know's life. It's just a story. It's a multicultural story, and it's the coming of age story of a young girl, and it's based in India and in the US. It has a strong Indian American female protagonist. And it just so happens that all my projects seems to have very strong female protagonists. I guess that's how I think. And, you know, the rest of the story is a secret. Wait till you see it on the screen.
We'll have to see it on the screen and we'll say, oh, we were there first.
That's right.
Tell us, what are some basic things that one must keep in mind that when they are thinking about writing a screenplay? Because I know a lot of people are starting to blog, they're starting to write a story, or they're writing to write a book. What are some things one must say, okay, you know what? If I'm thinking about writing a screenplay, what should I keep in mind?
Honestly, be true to who you are. Don't write by imitating somebody else's style or, thought pattern. Um, Make it really visual. Show as much as possible.
Well,
Don't tell. I'm
what do
sorry.
you mean when you say make it really visual? How do you write making it very visual? Does it have to be very descriptive?
Okay. So it's a combination of, obviously it's how you choose to show your backgrounds and your location, etc. But it's also, you show a lot. You don't tell the audience what to do, what to expect, or tell them what's happening. Okay, let me try and give like a writing example. She looks down at the ground. The dialogue, "You are my mother," versus she bends and touches the earth. She takes a deep breath, presses her hands together in prayer, bowing her head. So the first, she's declaring, "Oh, you're my mother earth." The second, it's her actions and what she's doing that automatically tells you. So sometimes you want the audience to go along the journey with you. You want them to deduce what's going on so that they feel they're part of the movie. So and honestly, a great tool is always Madame Google. Anytime you get stuck, you just, I did a lot of how to blah blah blah, how to end a scene with blah blah, and someone somewhere has always written their thoughts about it. Or this is technical stuff. This is not obviously them telling you how to deal with your own story, but as first timers, there's a lot of places to sort of gain information.
As a first timer, did you decide that, say, okay, let me just sit down and write? But you said like you did a lot of Googling. Did you take a course on Udemy? Did you do any of that? Or was it that, no, let me just get started, and as the questions came, you kept searching for the answers?
Honestly, I did start writing, but I took my time thinking about the story, really developing it all in my head, actually, coming up with the characters and all, coming up with the locations, coming up with some sort of a timeline. And I think when it all was like trying to get out of me, that's when I sat down and I actually wrote it.
And
And for that,
any other tools that did you use to help you? Because I know there are a lot of first time writers, and if you are first time writers, please let us know. I know that Vidya is telling us he started at 52, a web series. We've got somebody who's writing and blogging at 13. So we've got lots of writers. So, how do you do it when you get stuck? Do you go back and say, okay, you know what, there's so many answers out there?
So I think, you've actually asked me about 20 questions in that one question, which is very Suki style. Definitely like figure out, like for me, it was starting at the really basics, what software should I use? Or, what do you do? Do you go to Microsoft Word and then, indent and write the name of the character? But, things have progressed. I write in English, obviously. I don't know if there's any equivalents out there for writing in Hindi, for example, but like I use Final Draft. And Final Draft, you have to choose like character, dialogue, action, scene. And that really helps as a first timer. And it does all those indentations and all those things automatically for you. You don't have to worry about that. And then I think the rest of it is just experimenting, writing. I mean, I say that Indian Summer, my first draft, took me 3 weeks, but it was 3 weeks of pretty much nonstop writing. And it was mainly also, like I said, because I had accumulated all in my head and then I was writing it. But even though it took me 3 weeks to write, honestly, I'm still editing it. That's an ongoing process. And I think that'll happen until the movie gets made. I mean, whatever I submitted to the first competitions is very different from what I'm like submitting this week, for example. So it never really stops. These characters and your plots, unfortunately, occupy a lot of your brain cells. They become a part of you. And you may be in the middle of a dinner and you're going, aha, wait, I think that what I wrote was wrong, or I should have written it this way. And I'm like checking out mentally and thinking, oh, I wish I could go back to my laptop.
So Haripriya is asking a very interesting question, and I will take it right now because as we're talking about writing. So do you
Okay.
think there's such a thing as a writer's block? Is it such a thing? Or do we just have it in our head to tell us to hit a pause? Did you also ever get writer's block and say, because you said you just wrote it in 3 weeks?
Well, yeah, see, that is my problem actually, is that I get so much into my story that I really want the rest of the world to recede so I can do that. And I am currently undergoing a huge writer's block. And in fact, it's been on since October. I got derailed in my writing because of, some family health issues. And honestly, the film festivals, because I'm expected to attend by Zoom, and that really, cuts back because all these film festivals take place usually in the fall and early winter. And I was at a point in my novel where I was writing till 3 a.m. I'm a night owl. I'm not a morning person. So Suki, being here at 6:30 this morning. But, I'm hoping that by next week, I'm actually quite determined to give it full priority and devote a big chunk of time to it. My husband always points out, oh, these writers, they say they write 9 to 5, at 5 o'clock, they put it away. Hopefully I'll get to that at some point in my life, but right now it's not working for me. Right now I have to write when the thoughts are flowing, because as I'm finding out, if I don't do that, those thoughts kind of disappear and I'm a little bit stuck. Like, where should my character go? What should happen next?
So lots of questions are coming in. So we will take some of them right now because they're very, very interesting. So Vidya asks, especially now we're talking a lot about the writing part. Do you come
Yeah.
up with the list of it? Do you come up with the beat sheet first and then the screenplay, or vice versa?
I'm sorry, say that again. I lost you for a
You
bit.
come up with the gist first, like an outline of the whole story, and then get into the depth of the screenplay? Or did you just kind of develop your characters and saw where the story was going?
Yeah. So yeah, obviously, first you come up with the storyline, and then the storyline usually will automatically give you your main protagonist, the antagonist. So you have your very main characters, and then you start adding in characters. For me, a lot of the additional characters came on as I started writing. You may need a couple of characters who are actually really, their function is to be a sounding board for your main characters, for example. And some characters just will make their way into your script before even you realize it, because they're so key to its development. And, a lot of the times, I think your story takes you by surprise as you write. But obviously the main characters, you have to remain focused on them, make sure that they have their own arcs or stories to tell, and that and that each one has a distinctive voice. So that's really important. And I'm dealing with a multicultural in everything I'm writing, they're all multicultural. And so I have to make sure that the Indian versus the American versus the English, that they sound like, who they are, where they come from.
So this is a very interesting question now, because I think this is coming from Vidya. Now, when you're dealing in a multicultural setting, and suppose you're comfortable in English, can you write a lot of Hindi dialogues in English and expect it to be translated later? How do you deal with this multicultural setting? And especially if you're not comfortable writing in multiple languages also.
So some Hindi words have made their way into my script, for example. If you write, bus, chalo, nahi, I have not bothered to give an explanation, because usually it's one Hindi word tagged along to an English sentence in English, and the audience, the non-Hindi speaking audience, can get the gist of that. Honestly, like I said before, I don't even know if there's software for writing in Hindi. If it's much longer, then yes, you are obligated to give a translation of it. Some things are lost in translation, unfortunately. When you're giving the translation, it sounds great in Hindi, but you really lose the funny part of it. Okay, I won't get into it, because it'll then involve a longer explanation. But yeah, you can. And I think you automatically will, depending on what you're writing and what it's about. If it's something that has Hindi thrown in it, you will write it in Hindi, and then you'll give that explanation if it's too long.
So, Madhu, let's come back to, you said it took you 3 weeks to write the entire screenplay. How long, how many pages was this? I mean, I'm just curious as how long and how much did you write in 3 weeks? And first, when did you feel that, okay, this was good enough that you wanted to actually show it to somebody? And how long after that did you feel that, yeah, this is something I think is so good that I'm ready to submit it to a film festival? And you've submitted it to some pretty well-known film festivals.
So
yes, and I've asked 10 questions in one again.
Oh, that's fine. So yeah, I did write the first draft in 3 weeks. What I forgot to Google and find out is, how long should a screenplay be? And so it was 185 pages. Then for someone, like I said, who was always editing movies in her head and cutting them down and thinking they're too long, I realized that a Hollywood film, for example, is never more than 120 pages. So each page is literally 1 minute of screen time. So I was like, oh shoot. So I cut the 185 pages to 110. That was, believe me, extremely difficult. As a first-time writer, I think any writer, you fall in love with what you've written. It's taken so much effort that you're like, oh, but this is so good. How can I cut it?
Word is beautiful.
Yeah. So, I was in love with every dialogue I'd written. I had thought, like, this joke was so funny, and therefore it should never come out. But then I was taking out like entire scenes to bring it to 110. And then, for example, the very first two festivals I submitted to actually ended up being two of the biggest festivals. So one of them, actually the founder got in touch with me and said, is this your first time? I'm like, yes, it is. And he was like, okay, so it should be in 3 acts. Really, your screenplay is just 2 acts. You need a whole third act. So from that 185 to 110, I had to cut it back to 75 and add another 35 pages. So it's been a lot of editing, a lot of cutting. And even since then, I've gotten rid of scenes, added new scenes. And as far as the submission festivals, I did not submit with any idea that it was good or great or anything like that. The reason I submitted was they give you feedback. And as a first-time writer, I welcome the critique. Feedback to me was really important. And, you know, obviously I didn't expect it to go anywhere just to get feedback, but
Now tell me this. I mean, a lot of us think when we're submitting it to festivals, do they actually read all the screenplays that are submitted?
of course, of course. They have batches and batches of readers. They go through several stages. I remember the very first notification I got that I was a quarterfinalist in one of the competitions. I was joking around that, oh, someone somewhere made a mistake. It was total disbelief on my part. And then, you get the notifications. Now you're a semifinalist, and now you're a finalist. And I remember my very first finalist I put on Facebook because I was like, oh my God. so, yeah, they have a whole bunch of that. And then I think the very final ones are read by, panels of pretty important people, successful screenwriters or other people in the film industry.
So fantastic. Though, so she is asking when a thought hits you, do you manage to sit across and pen it, resisting the aura across you? You pen it somewhere in such an amount to get the points and go back to it later on.
You're so right. You really should do that. And this may be a problem with writing in your 50s or 60s or whatever, is that it goes out of your head as fast as it comes in. so,
Say that.
yeah, it's
Don't
really.
keep jotting down your
I'm
ideas.
sorry.
How do you do it?
I do take a moment, no matter what I'm in, and I do jot it down. I was in the middle of this huge gala, for example, and I had been struggling for a title for Indian Summer. So Indian Summer has actually undergone a couple of title changes. The first one was American-ish, and then there was too much ish, too many shows coming out with ish. So I did that, and then I was watching at a gala, all dressed up, and suddenly this thought came into my head, and I changed the title to The Other Side of My Being, and then later it became Indian Summer. So yes, when you get the thoughts, pull out your phone, pretend that you're writing a text, but write a note to yourself about your idea or whatever, and go back and explore it later.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. So, Yamna has a question. We need to start writing from desktop or a paper. Which one is better? Do you write on pen or do you write on screen? Does it really matter?
So even though I, have been one of the first users of Mac since the mid 80s to, I've done all my legal work, I kind of felt, I guess it was the traditional ideas of who an author and how an author writes came to my head with a pen and a beautiful notebook and, that kind of stuff. So I did start writing on paper, but honestly, then I had to retype it and I was like, okay, forget it. So now it's straight on my laptop.
But do you find one is more creative than the other, or both are good for that creativity part?
If I'm traveling sometimes and I don't want to deal with Wi-Fi and stuff then I will take a printout with me and work on it. And then it's like, do I have anything around here to show you? Then I'm like writing in the margins at the back of the papers, because sometimes I think I'm just going to do a little bit of editing and it ends up really rewriting or something. And then I'm like scribbling all over the place. And then when I get back, then I'm trying to decipher my own writing. I do like writing, and honestly, I hate typing. But if there's any drawback to screenwriting, it's the whole lot of typing that you're doing, because sometimes your thoughts are moving so fast, and I'm pretty good at, my speed is pretty good, but at the same time, I'm like making, hajar typos and just, but that's the only drawback, the actual tremendous amount of typing that you're doing.
So tell me this now, Madhu, when you won, what was your first reaction? I know you said that was you, I mean, you submitted it because you wanted to get a lot of feedback, and maybe submitting screenplays to festivals is a great way because you actually get feedback from very, very serious people in the business. But what was your, like you said, when you were a quarter finalist and we actually made a finalist list? What was your actual reaction at that point that, yes, I can do it? Yes, there is something. Were you pretty sure that, yes, there was something already there?
I mean, needless to say, the first reaction was total disbelief because I was a first time writer. And it's not even it's not even humility or anything that's making me say that. It really is total disbelief because, you know, here you are, you've written something, you're completely unsure what it is and how it is and whether it can be something real. And so when instead of, and not instead, but in addition to getting feedback, they also tell you, oh, by the way, you know, you're in the running for this. You know, it, I was quite taken aback. I submitted it to a variety of festivals. You know, each festival has a different focus. And the fact that it had started winning in very different festivals kind of showed me that I think it has universal appeal. It will have when it gets made into a movie. Which is great because I did strive for that. I did really try hard to, you know, have that multicultural aspect in it, and I also made a huge effort to give a very strong Indian viewpoint and not take away from it, as well as give an American viewpoint and not take away from that either. I mean, I did put in a lot of effort, so that was nice to see. I mean, you know, on the other hand, there was also that one critic who told me, oh, shouldn't it be more like Slumdog Millionaire? Like, why is this an affluent Indian family? Why can't it be somebody from the slums? That was so fun. And I'm like, okay, you don't get it at all, you'll never get it. So, you know, you're not trying to win over the whole world. It's okay if some people get it and others don't. So
Well, what do you think that it was about your screenplay that did actually make it? So, was it the writing? Was it the way that you developed the characters? Or was it the novelty of the story?
I wouldn't say so much the novelty of the story. It's a very simple story. I think it's the like I said, the and I'm saying this because it's the feedback I've received. I think it's the equality of the two cultures that I've, you know, strived to achieve. In And the dialogues are such that, you know, especially in what's happened, especially in the US with all the, you know, BLM, all the racial strife. I think it's nice for people to see that there can be screenplays um, where people are very proud of their heritage, but equally respective of other heritages. I think that has really making that effort is actually turned out to be a good thing because I
Fantastic.
think a lot of people wanted that.
So, Sunita is asking a question because you said, of course, when you're writing, there are lots of typos. So, do you actually correct those errors while you're writing, or you say, no, let me just go with the flow and I'll come back and correct everything?
It depends on my mood. And it depends on the time of the day or night. If it's 3 a.m. and my characters are still speaking in my head, then I'm just like typing away and I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll deal with it. Then of course the next afternoon when I sit down, I'm like, oh my god, this is like, it takes me a full hour to edit what I wrote the previous night, and then I'm like regretting not just doing it then. But you know, luckily a lot of the software corrects like the small typos, but obviously the big ones, you have to go in and do it. The problem with writing so Final Draft, the screenwriting software, is really great in that it'll correct all your you know, the layouts and all automatically. You don't worry about that. I still have to, maybe I'm just using Word for the novel, and I mean, I wish Word would do more of that for me. So I'm not constantly going and, you know, indenting and tabbing and this and that, and, you know, as part of my edits.
So definitely having the right tools helps. So another question that's come, because you talk a lot about your
But
character.
always give priority to your ideas. That's what I'm trying to say.
So when you're talking about characters, how do you develop your character? Because that is some of the important part in when you're writing a screenplay. So how do you suggest somebody go about that?
It's like I said before. Obviously, your main theme, your storyline itself, will give your antagonist, and that is the most important character. Everybody else is kind of there to help that person to move the storyline forward. And your antagonist will have a goal. Then there will be a conflict. So every time, so there's a goal, there'll be certain characters that will come in to help your antagonist achieve that goal. Then when there's a conflict, and you should have a conflict, every screenplay should have, a goal, and then something, stopping them from achieving that goal. And then, characters will come in trying to stop that. So the rest of the characters will come in automatically. You'll see that because you'll need them in order to move your screenplay forward. But your main characters, you'll start writing your script. So and sometimes your funniest character, for example, may be someone that you hadn't even thought of when you started writing. They'll pop their way in and they'll be very cute, and you'll keep them and you'll give them a bigger role, as happens in TV series. Someone comes and they're given a little side role, and then people fall in love with them and they're acting, and then the producers give them a bigger role for the next season or whatever. So that literally happens when you're writing.
So Minakshi is asking any tips or guidance of making more show than tell, because and how to avoid a lot of these cliche metaphors and scenes. So how to bring that uniqueness or novelty factor to it.
It's like that writing example I gave, where you can either have her look down and say, "You're my mother Earth," or you can have her go through the actions that show that's what she's intending. Show versus tell is very difficult. I'll admit I'm still very much learning that. You have to keep reminding yourself of that. You can write, whatever, Kathy was amazed, but you don't write that in a screenplay. You just give a dialogue, and it's her words that show her amazement. She's not even saying, "I'm amazed." She's saying, something, a longer line, that's, something to do with the story, that, it's fantastic that your book got accepted for publication, with the exclamation, and that shows her amazement, as versus her using those words, or you writing that in the subline that, "Oh, So show and tell is something that is difficult. It is something, like I said, I'm still learning, and it's something you constantly have to be conscious about. When you go back and edit, you have to keep editing for that.
And how descriptive does your show and tell have to be? Because you said you're also limited to 120 pages. If you're looking at a 2 hour, it's almost 1 minute a page if you're thinking about a screenplay.
It is very difficult, and I think that eventually comes down to the editing. Like I said, my first draft, which I thought was brilliant, was 185 pages. Brilliant, obviously, for someone who'd never written anything before and had never read a screenplay. That's the other thing. I ordered a couple of screenplays just to see some of my favorite movies, and just to see, how does it show in the screenplay. And honestly, that was a little bit surprising to me. Luckily, I didn't do that until I'd finished, because I don't know how it would have affected me before, if I'd read them before I started writing. But some of them are very bare bones, and it's really the director who's taken over and put in a lot of the meat in the scene. But some are like, pretty amazing, but very much shorter. Like some screenplays are only 95 pages. And I'm just like, oh my God, they got this whole story in and out in 95 pages. It's not easy, because the other thing to remember is, because of the way, I wish I had a copy here. the way a screenplay looks, it's yeah, actually I do have this. So I don't know if you can see this. So it's really not even a full page because a lot of it is cut up, with the name of the character, then the dialogue, then the spacing. So it's not even like a page in a novel has many, many more words in it. So I would say a 95 page or 100 page screenplay is really maybe 85 pages in a novel, much fewer words. So to get in and out in that number of pages, it is a challenge. But at the same time, like I said, I really hate really long movies, and unless they're so gripping and that every part was so important. But I'm referring more to the older Hindi movies, for example, where they could really have been cut down by a full hour or whatever.
So Haripriya is asking, when you're proofreading, and especially when you're editing, if you get better ideas that might change the whole concept, would you go for it or would you stick with the initial one?
Go for it. Don't get rid of your initial one,
Thank God you have lots of saves, version 1, version 2, version
Exactly, exactly. Oh my God, you should see my final draft. I think this year alone, because there's some deadlines coming up this week, some important ones. I think you'll see like 1/1/21, 1/3/21, because what was I doing on New Year's? I was at home writing. Yeah, you just save everything, and yeah, definitely explore that new concept. My screenplay has changed a lot. Like I said, it also, I've taken away really, there was this one very cute, funny scene that I loved the dialogue in, and I took it out last week, and it just it wasn't as important as what I wanted to introduce. And since I wanted to obviously keep controlling my page count, I had to say goodbye.
So you actually have to be a very tight editor, because like you're saying, you're almost constrained by the limit of how many pages you can have.
Yeah. And you know what helped me? And I do want to say this, is that because I was a first-time writer, I cast the movie in my head. So
there's a question that has come up, that when you cast the movie in your head, who was playing whom? And which character did you relate?
I would love to tell you this because that's my dream cast, and who knows what I'll get. But for the Indian woman, Priyanka Chopra helped me write this script. And for the man, it was Bradley Cooper. Now, yeah, if Bradley Cooper ever finds out and says, Madhu, I would love to do this, then yes, it'll be fantastic. But it helped in the visualization to actually have people talking and, going through the emotions. And it helped me. That was definitely my tool.
So that's awesome, because of course we love Priyanka, and you were talking about The Sky is Pink.
Yes.
And that you loved that movie of hers also.
I did. I think she did a great job. I think overall the movie was great. I would make it half an hour shorter, but but beyond, and I think it was a great story. Obviously, it was a true story, and everyone did an excellent job. So yeah, other than the length of it, I thought it was a good movie.
Now, Karen is asking, the ending is always a big challenge. So do you think about it early in the process when you're writing kind of the outline of, or the gist of the story?
The ending is a big challenge. I completely agree with you. I am very much stuck on the ending of my novel. I mean, I think it depends on who you are. I'm a very happy kind of person. I've always been an optimist. I want to make it a happy ending. But like, for example, in my novel, the happy ending means leaving one really nice character, really sad. And I'm so stuck. I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's a mental block, but it's not a mental block because I don't want to go there, but eventually I may have to and leave that very nice character sad. But yeah, endings are very difficult. Endings are very difficult. I mean, more kudos to you if you can leave things hanging in the middle and still make that a great ending, or, you know, have an exceptionally good or different kind of ending.
Now, Shilpa is asking, do you take inspiration from a lot of people around you uh, to write your characters? So are they, I mean, I know once you've said that you visualize them. So is this also people that you know or mostly fictional?
Oh, no, no. You are constantly borrowing from life. You are constantly borrowing from people you know or meet. And I don't mean, for example, one of my favorite, I wouldn't say favorite, but one of the screenwriters I admire, somebody asked him in an interview that I was watching that, why do you always have squabbling women in your screenplay? They're either, you know, main characters, or there's women squabbling in the background. Why? And he was laughing. He said, I've realized I do that. It's because I have two older sisters and I grew up with them squabbling my entire life. And so automatically there's always squabbling women in my script, whether or not they're really related to the script. And I think that's kind of true. I was lucky to have a 20-year-old daughter when I started writing the script. She was that age. And eventually she was the first person I gave to read my script. And I got the, who talks like that? Or no 20-year-old would speak like that, mom. So that was great. I was like, okay, how would a 20-year-old speak? But it's not that they're telling you how to write, as versus, you know, giving that little correction to you that this is not really the way someone is going to express their thoughts. Or so you borrow from everywhere. You never know. You can one of my really favorite screenwriters is Taika Waititi. Are you familiar with him? He's from New Zealand. He wrote, have you seen Jojo Rabbit? Is one of my most favorite movies in the last couple of years. And so not in Jojo Rabbit, but in one of his earlier movies, he had a funeral scene that, you know, everyone raved about. And when they asked him, oh, what was the inspiration? He said it was an actual funeral scene he had attended, and that the pastor had spoken that way, and he just literally put it in his thing, you know, somehow made his screenplay so that it had a funeral scene, and he was able to incorporate that. So you never know. You know, you basically, you have to keep your mind open, stimulated. You never know where you'll get the inspiration from. A lot of people I know, like they'll specifically go to an art gallery, you know, once a month or whatever, and just walk around and, you know, keep your ears open when people are talking around you. You know, what are they saying? How, or maybe you'll borrow a characteristic, how somebody walks, or, you know, or dresses, or it can be anything.
Janet, ma'am, I'm asking you to unmute because we would love to hear your thoughts on this. Because as a student and as a teacher, I mean, did you ever think Madhu would be into screenwriting?
I never thought at all, and I'm enjoying it very much, but I'm a mathematician, not an English specialist.
That's right. She was my maths teacher and my class
Quite a big
teacher.
learning curve for me, but congratulations to you, Madhu.
Thank you so much. It
Pleased
means
to
a lot
hear
coming
your
from you.
success.
Thank you, Janet, because yes, I'm also shocked because, like I said, I knew her 25 years ago. Maybe this is a new side to my friend that I am seeing. But a lot of people want to know now, Madhu, what's next after you've done a screenplay? It's been very, very successful. It's won a lot of awards. What's next for you?
Obviously, the dream is to get it made. That is a challenge. I have been approached by a couple of, you know, different from India as well as here. And, you know, fingers crossed that it'll go somewhere. I'm not going to be desperate to give it to just about anyone, but I'm going to really work on I'm hoping to remain involved. And I think one of the reasons being is the whole sort of cultural sensitivity that I talked about. I want to make sure that that remains and that is really treated well. So yeah, obviously, I'm not interested in selling my screenplay outright. I think a lot of professional screenwriters do that. But I would like to be involved in the. I'm so sorry. I have to let my dog in because he's going nuts outside the door. Give me 1 second.
While I give you your next question at the same time, if you can hear me, because Ashi has also asked this, that that book is very well written, it's excellent. And but how do you know whether one will succeed in making an identity despite having a minimum network? The reason why I ask you this is because you did not have such a big network in the film or in the screenplay industry when
Not
you.
at all.
So if you could give some tips there, because a lot of people are worried about that, then what if I don't have a network? How will I be successful in this area?
I'm learning that myself, to be very honest with you. Um, it is difficult without a network. For me, I would rather see it as a Hollywood production as versus a Bollywood, with obviously, or like a mix of the two, someone who has done in both places. But getting in touch is not easy. My right now, I'm trying to work with getting myself an agent. I have been contacted by a couple of agents. One sad thing about winning these festivals during COVID is that none of the festivals happen in person. So normally, you go there, you go on stage, you get the award. By the way, the awards are beautiful. I got some in the mail, but that whole thing of someone, people coming and meeting you, producers, whatever, all that interaction is gone. Things have been on Zoom, but it has really limited the sort of advantage of winning, which is people getting in touch with you. So just keep trying. There are a lot of festivals now in India. I've actually never submitted to an Indian festival, but there are a lot of festivals in India also. So go that route. That's the route I know, and keep trying.
Yamuna has a question, and this is the last one we'll take before we ask for your closing thoughts. Before writing, we must first set up our goal of writing, but our thoughts are always endless. So we might be jumbled, we might move on to another topic. What should be done in this case? We have so many ideas.
Sort them out. I'm somebody who doesn't take pen to paper until everything is bursting out. For me, that's an effective strategy. I'm juggling all these thoughts in my head. Sometimes, I'll use the notes on my phone. Or if I hear a good quote, I'll write it down. I have these now I have different notes for different things I'm writing, and this is good for this, or this is good for that. And but sort them out. Try and use all of them. There are some screenwriters like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's done Fleabag, and also the new James Bond. She has penned that. So she said she basically, obviously, she has a story in her head, but she thinks of great scenes. What would be a great scene? And she creates great scenes. Then she thinks of a beginning and an end, and then she puts it all together. That's so different from what I've done, but then I'm just a beginner, and when I become bigger, maybe I'll do that. Or when I'm writing for James Bond. But all ideas are important, and you'd be surprised at how they may all come together in some way.
Fantastic. So, Madhu, of course, as always, we're always out of time. So, any last thoughts, any tips for our budding writers out there, people that are inspired, and that, yes, we can do it, because Madhu did it in her late 50s. So, it's not like she has been writing. Of course, she wrote a lot of corporate briefs, but, any tips for everyone out there that wants to start writing?
I mean, just do it. That's all I can say. Just do it. Don't hold back. Everyone can do it. Experiment. Write a short story first if you want. Just you don't necessarily have to write a feature screenplay to begin with. That may be too big of a deal, but go with a shorter version, or just write a scene, see how it seems to you. Once you know what your style is, if your style is a quirky style, or if your style is more serious, or even horror movie or whatever, then you may do what I did, is you wait until you have a great idea for your very first one. And then again, mull over it, visualize it, plot it, jot down all ideas for it, create the characters. When it becomes like a whole big thing and more sort of, a more sort of wholesome picture, then, just sit down and write it. And don't worry about any mistakes in formatting and all these the technical stuff. That's easy. That you can take care of later. It's really getting your ideas down that's important. And each one of us has a story to tell, and it doesn't have to be in somebody else's style. It can be your own. You may be inventing the new style of writing, so just do it.
Well, thank you, Madhu. Thank you for joining us. I know it's very early in New York, so thank you, everyone. And I hope you guys took away a lot. We have lots of interesting things coming up on Sipping Thoughts. So, Madhu, thank you. And I
Thank
know
you so much for having me. This was great fun.
you've motivated me. I mean, to start thinking about picking up the pen.
Do it. Do it. Writing is very fulfilling. That's one thing I'll say.
Session's already been.
Thank you guys for joining us today.
Take care, guys. Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone. We'll see you soon again at Sipping Thoughts.
Thank you.